Hey, welcome back to Midwest Swing. You heard that right. Midwest Swing podcast, this time powered by Access Twins. I'm your host, Brandon Warne. You can find me on Twitter at Brandon_WARNE. And we have a familiar face in the co-host chair. You may remember him from the Locked On Twins podcast. It's my friend Ryan Turnquist, who you can follow on Twitter at the digit number 2, followed by 2 underscores, and then Canes with a Z. How are we doing on this fine evening?
Couldn't be a clunkier Twitter handle, by the way. So you're welcome.
Yeah.
I'm doing well, Brandon. I'm fired up to talk about some baseball. It's been a long time, man. So I've got some takes.
Well, and I obviously, if you're on the podcast listening to us, you're aware that I've started Access Twins, a Substack platform that's a newsletter, and I've started a podcast. Not this one, though this one is being rebooted from the old zone coverage days. But that 90s baseball pod is also a podcast I'm doing with former Orioles and about 5 other teams right-hander Greg Olson. So they will both be posted on Access Twins, on Libsyn. I'm probably going to have to put together the channel for that before I post this. So while you're listening to this, keep in mind that I don't have the channel created yet, but I will be creating the channel. And this is all stuff you don't need to know. In the meantime, back at it. And it's going to be fun to do a Twins podcast for the first time in literally like a year and a half. The last episode I did would have been early March 2020. So wow, is that 20 months? That's crazy.
Well, what might have happened then? Nothing happened in early March 2020, did it?
Yeah, no, nothing that I know of. I know a lot of things didn't happen after that, like leaving the house, but what's changed for you? What are you up to besides hosting this podcast with me? See, I'm strictly working from home, doing my thing with Sport Radar. I've been doing the Access Twins thing, doing the 90s podcast thing, doing the dad thing. And so what you see behind me, if you're watching on YouTube, is kind of my environment during the day on weekdays. For you, though, you leave the house. You actually confided in me off air that you leave the house during the day. So that's one thing you've got on me that I don't do on a daily basis unless I'm picking up my daughter from school.
I'm confused. I was told this would be my new full-time job. Is that not right? Do I have that wrong?
We're gonna need to get that Access Twins cash rolling in first, and then we'll see.
I'll have your people call my people.
Yeah.
No, I'm a school counselor at a school just about 40 minutes south of the metro. We'll leave it at that for now, in case people who know me listen. Well, they'll find out anyway. But so recently moved down to the town in which I work, and we're new residents there. We would be me and my fiance Allie. We got engaged in February,
Very exciting.
and we're slated to get married, hopefully far enough away from COVID here next October.
Oh man, it better be.
So,
let's just say
gosh.
that much. So let's dive right in. You don't need to beat around the bush too much. This has been a unique off season for myriad reasons, not the least of which that there's an impending lockout as of mere hours that we're recording this. First of all, I want to say this. I think free agents have done pretty well, the guys who've signed so far, but I do think the arbitration guys are getting hosed because, first of all, you see a guy like Jake Cave, who now has been outrighted off the roster, but what he took for financial value versus what MLB Trade Rumors and Matt Swartz projected was significantly less.
Mm-hmm.
Again, we saw that too with Ben Gamble, I think, of the Pirates. So what I think is happening is in this rush to sign big league free agents, these arbitration eligibles are thinking, all right, I don't want to get to the freeze out, get non-tendered at the deadline. And then when everything comes back and most of the teams have blown the budget that they've set for themselves, I'm left to pick up scraps with either a team I'm not interested in playing for, a dollar amount I'm not interested in playing for, or some combination of that. And so I think it's been a good winter for the guys who've signed so far. Every time you look at a contract, you're like, hey, he did pretty well for himself. But I am curious to see what's going to happen on the other end. Let's just say that.
Yeah, we've spent the last 5 years or so, right, getting used to slow off seasons where
Mhm.
the big names get squeezed a little bit. The numbers are maybe a little below what you would think. The big names get their money, but the numbers have been largely below what they have been.
We've got breaking news, I think. Jeff Passan is saying MLB and the MLBPA have agreed on a 5-year deal.
No way.
I'm checking 743,661 followers, blue check mark.
I don't have it.
Oh, I'm an idiot.
Did you got?
I got. Oh, because you know what? Eno Saris retweeted it. That's not very nice.
Can we leave it in? We got to leave this in. Right?
No, we're definitely going to leave it in. There is breaking news, though. Joey Wendell's getting traded to the Marlins.
He is. I wonder what that's going to be an interesting return.
Yeah. I blame Eno Saris, though, because that's my former boss at Rotographs. I'm shook by that. No, I'm definitely leaving that in the show. I deserve to look like a dingus for the first episode.
Do you have to do the crying Jordan meme now? Is that what that is?
I didn't retweet it, so I think I'm still okay, but maybe on the Zoom call I can do the background of that. Yeah, so Joey Wendell, I thought, just to kind of transition a little bit to him, I thought he made a little sense for the Twins if he could play short, but honestly, it's, if they trade for a shortstop, it could be him, it could be Kiner Falefa, it could be Paul DeJong. In fact, my MLB The Show here on PS5, I've been kind of mixing and matching. I like to play the off season out, see what it looks like. And a lot of times early in the off season, I kind of like to have a little fun with it. Like, woo, what would it be like if the Twins had signed Josh Donaldson a couple years ago, back when I thought that there was no chance they were going to? Then they did, and it became realistic. So like for right now, for instance, I have Carlos Rhodan as my number one starter, because who doesn't want to throw 98 with a guy from the left side? But my shortstop is Paul DeJong too. And I could see that happening because they got Edmundo Sosa. Mm-hmm. But again, there's options to sign Freddie Galvis. There's options to sign Jose Iglesias. It's not, it's not one size fits all. But Wendell, to me, made a little bit of sense. The Twins do have a past with trading with Tampa Bay, not only, of course, Joe Ryan and Drew Strowman, but Jake Odorizzi as well. So, I thought there was a chance, but looks like it's not going to happen.
Yeah, I thought he fit, and really, to your point, anybody who plays shortstop passively well, and maybe can hit a little bit, would fit for the Twins. Paul DeJong certainly fits in that category. You mentioned the name that I really like, and that's IKF, Isaiah Kiner Falefa, from
really
the
good
Rangers.
defender. Really good defender.
Really good defender. Kind of just I don't love this, this type of term, but kind of your kind of old school gritty, kind of clubhouse glue guy. He's not going to hit all that well, but he's going to give you great defense. He's going to get on base a little bit. And he's a good stopgap guy. I mean, I prefer something like that. And he can play all over the diamond, to a Jose Iglesias, to a Freddie Galvis. You're light hitting decent fielders who are already in their, low to mid 30s.
Yeah, there's just not much upside in a play like that. If you're going to spend, probably what, 3-4 million on one of those guys, or bringing back Simmons, which I think would terrify a lot of people. You may as well just go get IKF, who can do a fairly decent Simmons impersonation, is young enough to maybe see a little bit of an upswing with the bat. And, maybe too, he could play somewhere else if shortstop gets taken. I mean, you've seen him catch before, you've seen him move all over the place. He's just very taken very well to short, and there's just not going to be any shortstop reps to be had between Semien and Seager in Texas, which is also a pretty good segue. I mean, they were talking about on MLB Network tonight, before I came on with you, that basically all the free agents who've signed big deals have gone to teams who did not make the playoffs this past season. And other than, basically Toronto, who I think they were in the play-in game or something like that, they've not really made the playoffs since the whole Sam Dyson thing with Joey Bats and the Josh Donaldson days. I think it's good for the game to see teams spending that kind of money. And part of me is like, yeah, what are the Rangers doing? But this is also what I would want my team to do if they were in that spot.
I just love the competitiveness of it just
Mhm.
on a league wide level. Again, we talked about, we've seen the last 4 or 5 seasons. Um, I mean, roughly half the teams not compete, maybe more than half the teams not really compete in free agency,
Mhm.
which is why a lot of these, middle players have gotten squeezed. And you see teams that are, I think Detroit's on the cusp a little bit more than the Rangers, but you see teams that weren't in the playoffs last year, that are spending. The Mariners, who had what I think some would um, consider a pretty lucky season, maybe a little bit of a fluky season for the
Mhm.
Mariners.
Mhm.
But they have a cadre of prospects coming, and they're putting money into it with the Robbie Ray signing. Um, so I mean, you like to see it. You like to see the competitiveness. You like to see the variety of it too. And it's not just the Yankees and the Red Sox and the Dodgers getting all of these guys.
Right.
The Mets are obviously your big market spender at this point, but it's refreshing to see. And this could change. I could eat my words in 10 minutes as Correa signs with the Yankees,
Right.
but it's refreshing to see some other teams kind of get in on the party a little bit. Um, Although not necessarily your mid-tier payroll Minnesota Twins yet.
Yeah, and I'm kind of curious rather to see um, where things go from here. I mean, especially for the Twins, because, and we should probably just dive right into the Byron Buxton extension. I think you texted me that you were elated, and if the Twins didn't do anything the rest of the offseason, you'd be okay with it. And I know there's a little bit of hyperbole there, but honestly, getting him signed, that's huge, man. 7 years. There was never any doubt in my mind that I'd have gone to the 100 million mark for him. I probably would have done it for 5 or 6 years. To get it in seven,
Mm-hmm.
15 million per for each of his free agency years. I think I did the math out to like 25.5 million if he's an MVP. If he's an MVP, you pay 25 million and a half for that all day, every
Mm-hmm.
day. Uh, Easy peasy deal that honestly, I like the creativity of it. I think too, you need to show that that your struggles from 2011 through 2017, 16, wherever you want to say they technically stopped, had to produce something. They didn't produce a playoff win. They produced
Nope.
Jose Barrios, who you got rid of. So if you don't keep Buxton, you've then fed that narrative that I tweeted that got people all riled up about how rebuilding is a farce. Now, again, I know teams have rebuilt and won and all that, but I also don't believe in the idea that you have to tank to be good. You should always be
Right.
looking to get better. If you're sitting in this free agent market and you see a Trevor Story available, and if Carlos Correa gets 300 million and you can get Story for 180 or 160 or 150, even if you're the Colorado Rockies, and again, they've talked about signing Story, and I think he probably laughed it off. Um, make those moves when you can. The opportunity to get better is always there, and you should always be doing it, whether you see yourself as a 60-win team, an 80-win team, or a 100-win team.
Well, and I think to the point that you made on Twitter, it was very rarely does tanking, especially in baseball, really pay off. There's a very rare cases where that number one pick is a slam dunk sure thing.
Right.
One of them was Bryce Harper. The Nationals won a World Series. Bryce Harper was gone.
Right. They had the back-to-back years with Strasburg and Harper, which is
Right.
about as good as you could ever do back-to-back. It's like if you could somehow draft like Mark Pryor and Joe Mauer back-to-back years, if you
Mm-hmm.
wanted to keep it local and maybe something we could understand. But when the Twins have had high picks, they got Mauer, they got Royce Lewis, but they also got Adam Johnson. They also got BJ Garby. Like, to hit on that many picks that quickly in succession is never a guarantee. You have the Astros, who drafted Mark Appel and Brady Aiken, neither
Mm-hmm.
of which have pitched a big league inning and probably never will. Now, again, that Aiken pick rolled over into, if I'm not mistaken, either Correa or Bregman. I think it was Bregman.
Yep.
So it came out fine. They got Springer with the 11th overall pick. The only way you're getting the 11th overall pick if you're tanking is if it's the last couple of years where there's 10 teams tanking and you're the worst at it.
Right.
So what I'm seeing this offseason, though, is that right now it feels like there's really just probably 2 teams not trying in the Orioles and the Pirates. One on each side, really, who cares? I think you could even probably have 2 or 3 on each side. Who cares? The problem is when you want to expand the playoffs, as they did in 2020 and as they may do in the next CBA, if sitting on your hands makes you an 84 win team that gets you into the dance, we saw the Brewers run through the playoffs after almost losing a wild card game to the the Nationals did it. They beat the Brewers because I think Trent Grisham bobbled that ball. And then they ended up winning the World Series. If that wild card didn't exist, that second wild card or whatever. I mean, if we're going to have 7 teams on each side and only 7 teams are trying, to me, that calculus just falls short. It doesn't work.
Well, and it makes it tough because then you have a 162 game season and you're invalidating basically 6 long months when you have 14 teams trying and 14 teams get in. Like, what are we doing?
Including the last month when you're competing for eyeballs with the NFL, when everyone still has a chance in September. I mean, even the Jacksonville Jaguar fans, if they're 1-3 are like, it's not over yet, but they've spent that September at least engaged. Now, again, Jacksonville, not necessarily a baseball market, but you understand what I'm saying as far as September, you need to ratchet up those pennant races. You need those pennant races for a reason. And if you've disincentivized those pennant races, I mean, again, they're probably going to do things where you can choose your postseason opponent or not play a one-off like the NBA play-in game or the wild card game like we've seen in baseball. Again, but I mean, it's a whole season for one game. That's weird too. So I don't know.
It is. Yeah. It'll be interesting to see the outcomes of that, but just broad strokes. I'm happy to see that teams that weren't spending in the past and weren't competing really in the past now are. Where the local 9 falls into that, we'll see. You mentioned, sitting on your hands, getting you 84 wins and then limping into the playoffs as one of the 7 teams. It's kind of scary to think that could be a Twins type trajectory soon. Yeah. Not that they would, but we've seen how patient this front office has been, this ownership group has been, and there can be a pretty fine line between patience and sitting on your hands.
Yeah. And, as much as you and I know that winning one playoff game is not that important, I think it gets viewed through a different scope if they've won at least one playoff game to this point, even though from a process versus results standpoint, you and I can look at it and say, hey, I can squint and kind of see what they're doing. We look back now and it's like, Matt Shoemaker never really made any sense. J-Hap made some sense, but J-Hap would have made sense as your number 5 starter with a solid number 4 rather than your number 4 with Shoemaker and Randy Dobnak and Lewis Thorpe and Devin Smeltzer as your fallback. Speaking of those guys as the fallbacks, some of the guys the Twins have dropped from the roster here in the last few weeks include, and I want to know if any of these guys surprised you or if you have any parting thoughts for them. Jake Cave, which became public knowledge as of Tuesday.
Bye.
Yeah, boy. So glad everyone got worked up about him making $800,000 on his quote unquote contract, which is actually a split 300-800 contract. So if he plays in the minors all next year, he'll get $300,000, which is a nice bit of change for a guy at AAA, but not on the 40, not affecting anything. And we can't ignore the fact of how good he was the first 2 years, and in that sense, was a complimentary fourth piece, but not a guy you could rely on in any form or fashion after these last 2 years. So I'm not really lamenting it. Just to me, though, that he got an arbitration contract was like, that money's not guaranteed till the end of spring training. And I think you only pay like a 15% of it if they go through spring training. It's all based on if he would have made the team or not. And part of me wonders, well, as things stand right now, I mean, you're probably looking at Gilberto Celestino as your 4th, right?
I would say so.
So, I mean, and we'll talk about this a little bit because MLB executive Burner, I don't really like to give credence to Burner accounts, but he's got some interesting stuff today. Talked about a couple guys who he thinks might get non-tendered. where, you kind of get your wheels spinning a little bit if the Twins might be interested in bringing on another outfielder, especially a guy who, whoever this year's version of Eddie Rosario is, for instance, maybe not necessarily the same type of player, but we'll talk about that in a second. So neither of us are really lamenting Jake Cave, who, as far as I can tell, is going to remain in the organization. Change up Charlie Barnes, good guy. Unfollowed me on Twitter though. I'm kidding. I'm messing with you. You just never got the feel that he was going to be anything more than kind of Andrew Albers 2.0 for me.
Sure. Yeah, no, that's about right.
Williams Astudillo, the ride was fun, but it's over now. Made solid contact last week in a punch that landed on unsuspecting, I think, pitcher. Yes. So best contact he's made in 2 years. Kyle Garlick. On a better team, Kyle Garlick would have had more of a role. And I think what happens when you have a roster built like puzzle pieces, like the Twins did, like Kyle Garlick makes sense if you bring Alex Kirilloff up to start the season, because then you've got that platoon built in. They didn't bring him up. They ended up playing Cave a bunch. They did a bunch of things that, and then eventually they just fell apart. And so then you're like, well, what's Kyle Garlick even doing on this team? And then he got hurt, and he get sports hernia and whatever. But for the role he was signed to do, which was hit left-handed pitching, he did okay. And he could probably catch on with someone like the Orioles and be a lefty masher, and maybe his future is as a Steve Pearce, Johnny Gomes type, but it's just not with the Twins.
He's a guy who really, I think, would and did fit better as kind of a National League, no DH pinch hit lefty masher type.
That might be tough with the new CBA then.
Yeah, it doesn't exist anymore, really. I don't think it's going to.
To be fair, though, the 26th man does kind of put that back into the mix, but He doesn't have that defensive versatility of shortstop, center field, second base, up the middle of the field, which to me, I still like my 25th, 26th guy to have that. It helps. And again, we'll talk about an outfielder that I'm kind of interested in, that the Twins have Kepler who can play center. And when they had Rosario, they had 3 guys who in theory could stand in center field. Because this guy that I'm going to talk about is not a center fielder at all. But the fact that a guy like Garlick hung around spoke to that the Twins envisioned a role for him, and then the role just never came to fruition. And, he got hurt. It's over, whatever. And then the other guy I want to talk about is Devin Smeltzer. Great dude, great story. The whole Chase Utley connection was very cool. But, just again, not a lot of smoke there with the sizzle.
You can only, especially now, I think you can only survive on craft and location when the stuff is that down for so long. And I think he's probably just going to be a quad A guy.
Mm-hmm. Or if you first had the stuff, and lost it, but learned how to pitch
right
beforehand. And the stuff just was not, just wasn't there. And you know what? I don't know if he'll stay in the organization. I think he can probably elect free agency based on his service time and all that. But great dude. And it would have been good for him to stay healthy this year. They could have seen more of him. But then you probably don't see as much Bailey Ober or Joe Ryan or Griffin Jacks. So, baseball is a game of opportunity, and he wasn't able to take that chance. Same for Lewis Thorpe, who let's talk about guys who the 40 is full. They claimed Trevor McGill today. They claimed Jarrell Cotton a little while back. There are some 40-man spots that have to be tenuous, because anytime they add anybody this offseason, and again, I know blah, 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 they haven't done anything yet. Once they do, they're going to have to let guys out, outright them, whatever. When I look at this 40, there's a few guys that could still slip through. Ralph Garza comes to mind. I wouldn't be surprised if they actually try to maybe run McGill through again. Lewis Thorpe is probably on the chopping block. Danny Coulomb. Again, we'll see. Hopefully I can get this posted before the non-tender deadline, so none of this is rendered as until we find out who's been tendered and who hasn't.
Sure.
But there are some guys who are on that chopping block. Is there anybody I missed that you can think of?
Well, you mentioned one. I don't think they would do it, but I went through this the other day, and it depends how many people they add, but I think Griffin Jax is near the back end of that 40 for me.
Mhm.
I don't know if he actually would be, but like I said, it depends how many people they add. The four that you mentioned, Thorpe specifically, I think will be a given. He's out of options.
Oh
He
yeah, yeah.
hasn't. He's out of options. He hasn't shown much. I imagine he's going to be a given to be off the 40 man once they make it a
And he
few
might hang
moves.
around anyway. I mean, it's the only organization he's ever known. They've been with him through a lot of stuff. I mean, the arm injuries, and the stuff he dealt with during the pandemic season.
Yep.
But and again, he doesn't owe the Twins that. I'm just thinking that it's possible he could
Right.
clear and stick.
Right. Yeah.
Other than that, though, let's do this. Let's talk about the additions. You've got Jose Miranda, Chris Vallimont, Royce Lewis, Blaine Enlow, and Enlow will go on the 60 and create a roster spot for when
Yep.
they invariably sign someone on March 1st or when they do their thing. Whoever's still left out there on February 18th, that's going to be the Blaine Enlow spot, or it's going to be a non-roster guy that's a reliever, the Danny Coulomb, Jared Burton, Casey Fiend type. That roster spot will be allocated to somebody, but it can't be washed away yet. Josh Winder and Cole Sands. So no Wander Javier, no who was the other
Severino.
Sorry?
Junior Severino.
Junior Severino. And then was there a pitcher people were upset about too? I can't remember.
Yeah. Well, converted shortstop into a pitcher. Jordan Gore was probably the closest.
Yeah, that's it. And he's like 27 or 26,
yeah.
I want to say. So I mean, people are becoming a I don't want to say victim, but they're imprisoned to the idea that every year they're going to lose an Akil Baddoo.
Right.
Although it's only really happened this year. And again, there's no guarantee Akil Baddoo is going to be good moving forward. Just like there's no guarantee Lamont Wade is going to be good moving forward. And if you a year ago had to choose between Lamont Wade and Jake Cave, it's not as obvious as people are making it seem, because Lamont Wade slugged like 340 or something like that with the Twins.
It was funny. Those two specifically, their breakouts, and good for them.
Yeah.
Came at a very interesting time in the Twins world, where those two guys are breaking out. The Twins are struggling getting hurt. Kyle Garlick's getting reps in center field.
Yep.
Rob Schneider is
I love it.
Is getting reps in center field.
Brand new Boston Red Sox, by the way.
Right. Yeah. Good for him. Just signed today.
Yeah.
So I could see him getting a shot up there on, occasion.
Sure.
I mean, we took Zue Lin, so they took
right. Yeah, it's fair.
Schneider.
It's kind of like when the Vikings signed Steve Hutchinson, and so the Seahawks said, all right, well, we're taking Nate Burleson. But yeah, it is what it is.
Yeah.
No, and they might non-tender Hunter Renfroe. That's one of the names on the list that executive burner was talking about too. Not the guy I'd be interested in, but speaking of guys who are big corner outfielders who don't have much value outside of hitting.
So I don't want to step on your rundown, but you keep bringing it up. Who's the guy? Who's this guy that you're interested in? Can we get to it?
I think Andrew Benintendi, I would give a look.
I like it.
I mean,
I do.
They already had the chance to draft him, and they took Nick Gordon, who my feelings on, or was it Tyler J?
It was Tyler J.
I
was gonna correct you.
Okay,
Tyler J. Oof.
Yeah, and I mean, my feelings on Nick Gordon are very well documented. Not as severe as I think they've been perceived by the person himself.
Sure.
I just think he's not a difference maker. It's not the end of the world, and if he proves to be one, bully for him. But I just don't think it's going to happen. Yeah, they had the chance to draft Benintendi. I wrote actually at the beginning of the pandemic the prospects that I thought had the most to lose by missing a season, and I thought Akil Baddoo was on that list. Misses the whole season. He had the Tommy John surgery. Barely played above high A or whatever it was. I mean, there's just so many things working against him. And then he goes and balls out for the Tigers. I mean, we also cried about Daniel Palka that first year he left and hit however many home runs with a 295 on base for the White Sox. Hell hath no fury like a Twins fan scorned.
Yeah, right. Well, and credit where it's due to the Tigers. They took basically a shot in the dark on upside, on athleticism, on
as one should when they're bad.
Yep, exactly. So credit to them for doing that. The Twins had a good roster. We're under a crunch, and made two, I think, in the moment defensible moves. Now hindsight's 2020, sure, but in the moment, were you upset that Akil Baddoo got sniped? In the moment, were you upset that Lamont Wade was traded for Sean Anderson? And I don't believe that people were. So yes, it turned out how it turned out, and yes, it was unfortunate, especially given the state of the Twins and their outfield last year.
Yeah.
But it's got to be process over results. It's got to be process over results.
Well,
Otherwise,
yeah, I was more than marginally annoyed about Baddoo, but only because like a guy who walks 70 sometimes in a minor league season doesn't come around very often. Aaron Hicks was one of those guys, and I mean, he's not Aaron Hicks in a lot of respects. Two very different players, but could be difference-making center fielders. The skill set, you're like, yeah, man, I love Akil Baddoo and I hope it works out, but the time ran out in the hourglass for what they needed to have happen. COVID happened, and the TJ surgery, or the elbow, whatever it was, all that happened. You only have a certain amount of time. A 40-man roster is specifically 40 men. It's not always your best 40. It's 40 guys all on their different timelines, and it's a puzzle, man. That's one thing I think people miss or don't understand, is that it's not an easy puzzle to put together. They're saying, oh, put Royce Lewis on there 2 years ago and give him a shot. Okay, well, what if he stinks for 3 years and you got to, non-tender him or take him off the roster, and then he goes elsewhere and becomes Carlos Gomez in Milwaukee, or he becomes whoever else. Like, I get kind of heated about the subtleties of it, just because it's a thinking man's game, and a lot of fans have like an NFL mentality about it.
Well, it's a lot tougher than the armchair GMs would have you believe. I mean, I guess technically I'm an armchair GM too. I just like to think I'm a more thoughtful one.
We both are, really. I mean,
but I think the analogy I would draw, so the Akil Baddoo thing, it's like it's comparable to somebody taking Wander Javier this year. He hasn't played above A ball, high A. He's dealt with injuries, hasn't really performed. Maybe Baddoo performed a little bit, but what is short season ball? It's like someone taking Javier and Javier somehow balling out. Like, who would have seen that coming? Yeah, you can take, and nobody's going to take him. Not he's.
It would have to be. It would have to be the Orioles or the Pirates. Like that. Those are the only two teams I could see. And the Pirates have Cole. Is it Cole Tucker playing short, or I don't even know who they have playing short. I know they have Brian Hayes at third. I don't even know who they have playing short. It was Eric Gonzalez for a while there. And Baltimore. I mean, don't know. Yeah, but Baltimore is probably pretty wide open too. But they went that route with the cat from Oakland, and he didn't stick, Richie Martin. So maybe they do it, but I just to me, he's just nowhere near where Baddoo was in terms of even low level polish.
Right. Yeah. I'm just trying to illustrate that's the type of stab, shot in the dark that we're talking about here.
Right.
And like I said, good on the Tigers for doing it, but it's nothing worth still wringing your hands over at this point. And I think hopefully, back to the Buxton news, some of that goodwill will maybe paint over the two big misses from last year.
Any of the guys they put on the 40 that surprised you? I mean, Valamont didn't have a great season, but I like what he brings to the table in terms of, maybe you put him in the bullpen and see if it sticks, and then go back to the rotation, or the arm could be big enough. Winder and Sands, I mean, they make sense. Obviously, Miranda and Lewis were slam dunks, but yeah, none of them really stand out to me as like super surprising outside of maybe Valamont.
Mid-tier level type prospect arms at double A, and I think triple A in some cases. I think those make sense to protect, right? Those are the types of guys typically. Those and toolsy middle infield types and catchers are the guys that go in the Rule 5 draft. So I think those are the guys that it makes sense to protect. Valamont was the guy they got in the Lewin Diaz, Sergio Romo trade, that extra prospect, and they like something about him. So you might as well, if you feel like you've got the space, put him on there. Cole Sands pitched pretty well at Wichita, and the others were pretty much givens. So no surprises on that end for me. Severino was the name that stuck out just because of the bonus that they paid him from the Atlanta Braves deal, but he hasn't really done much. And
not the Anthopoulos thing, Capolella thing, right?
Yep. So
and all those guys got let go.
Yep. And so that was the name that stuck out, but he hasn't done a whole lot in terms of production. He's been hurt as well.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a worthwhile flyer, and he's likely a second baseman.
Yeah,
so
I mean they're flush with those types. I mean, who knows where Miranda's going to play? Miranda a year ago was Rule 5 eligible and didn't get picked up. Imagine if he would have had any sort of season in the big leagues, in addition to what we saw from Baddoo, and Lamont Wade wasn't a Rule 5, but he could have just as well been when they let Sean Anderson go on waivers. But do you have any hopes for any of these guys who come over on waivers, McGill or Cotton or whoever else they might claim? I kind of like the idea of getting those guys who've got big arms. McGill throws in the mid 90s with a good slider, but he got just pummeled last year. And in fact, there's actually a video going around of Jake Cave getting struck out by McGill on 3 pitches at Wrigley last year. So I'm coming for your 40-man spot, Bozo, is basically what he said. I've liked Jarrell Cotton for a long time. I think he's got a pretty good changeup. But again, staying healthy is super hard when you're a pitcher.
Yeah, I've liked Cotton. He is. I'm a fan of those kind of post-hype guys who had the prospect pedigree.
Mm-hmm.
He was pretty decent for Oakland for a little stretch there as a starter. He can't stay healthy. Good, like you said, good changeup. Maybe a relief role you'll see an uptick and stuff, and maybe he'll be able to stay healthy in shorter stints. But I think it's similar to last year. It was last year. It was Ian Gibaut and Brandon Waddell, those back end reliever types, and oftentimes those guys don't stick. So I would say probably don't get attached to Jarrell Cotton. Probably don't get attached to Trevor Megill. And if it works out, great, good find. I mean, their chance is worth taking, but those are pretty fungible spots, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, if they pan out, they might be just the next Matt Whistler, who was a 1-year guy,
right?
And not even a 1-year guy, who's COVID guy, so 2 months or whatever. Twins came into the off season with 12 arbitration eligibles. So Buxton is a done deal. Taylor Rogers estimated at 6.7 mil. I'm tendering him. I assume you agree.
Yeah.
Duffy at 3.7, final year of our. Yep. John Gant is out. Well, we didn't even mention him, but he's not going to miss him. Mitch Garver at 3.1, slam dunk. How about Caleb Thielbar at 1.2? For me, it's a yes, but
I feel like you have to. He's pitched very well. 1.2 is a modest price. They don't have anything really, have much in the pen.
Well, I feel like if you get one good lefty between him and Coulomb, you're probably happy with it.
Yep.
Or who's the lefty that came up with the big arm at the end of last season?
Oh dear, I'm blanking too.
I got it here. Giovanni Moran or Giovanni Moran. Between those 3 guys, there's a chance you have between 1.1 and 1.5 legitimate left-handed relievers. I mean, maybe it takes a year for Moran to figure it out, or he's one of those guys who from August to September has like a 2.0 ERA after a 6. Guys who figured out late in the season. Alcala was kind of like that a couple years ago, and then again this year. So Ref Snyder's already gone. Cave basically gone. Coulomb at 800K for me, easy yes. Just because he was respectable, and you can cut him for basically nothing if he stinks in spring.
It wouldn't surprise me if he's non-tendered.
Okay.
I mean, who knows? I would take the 800K because it's basically nothing, but we've seen he was DFA'd before. He's been DFA'd before. So, and
it's a full 40. So they are going to need spots. 2 more. Juan Minaya was impressive down the stretch. To me, I mean, the fact that he outpitched Alex Colomé is it's a feather in the cap for my idea. And we'll talk about our ideal off seasons the rest of the way before we break this up. None of my quote unquote blueprints include the Twins signing any relievers of consequence. I saw somebody say Raisel Iglesias today, and I'm like, you're on one. There's 0.000% chance.
No.
I think what they'll do is they'll get another collection of super interesting arms, and then they'll try to build around Rogers, Duffy, Alcala, maybe Stashak if they believe there's anything left there, Thielbar, Manaya, and then hopefully guys pop through. They have enough interesting arms in terms of Duran, if he's not starting, to come up and throw some darts for him. But for me, Manaya, I think you give him another go around after what he did. He was good enough to give him another shot.
Yeah, you might as well. He's good, and there's low risk in doing it now. I mean, you can keep a guy, and what's his number, like 1.1 projected?
1.1, yeah, 1.1.
Yeah. So I mean, it's a drop in the bucket. It's worth doing it. To your point, I've never been a fan of paying relievers. You know that. Certainly not what the elite relievers go for in this market, and even like the Aaron Loop, all credit to him, get your money, but
that didn't make sense to me.
2 years, 17 million for a lefty reliever. I don't understand that type of investment. Even, Kendall Graveman maybe made a little more sense because he was so good down the stretch.
But if they keep Kimbrel, that's a mess.
Yeah.
It's a great bullpen, but for way too much money.
Right. And so even that's like, well, I don't know. So I've never been a fan of paying relievers because of the volatility. I've been burned before by Addison Reed personally. So
me too.
So yeah. So
Well, Reed and Rodney and Colomé. I mean, there's just I even remember back in the day when like guys like Tony Sipp and Antonio Bastardo were getting 3-year deals worth like $7 million a year. Or when the Rockies were going nuts with like Brian Shaw and I think maybe Dunn was another one, and a few other guys that I'm not remembering. But there was this stretch where even just the most ordinary relievers were getting $6 to $8 million on multi-year deals, and it's just like, and this front office has not really shown a desire to cling to their relievers. They let Trevor May walk. A year from now, they might let Duffy and Rogers walk. In fact, I would bet on it that neither of those two are Twins in 2023 or 2023. Yeah, I gotta get my years straight here. But they're going to have to figure out a lot of things moving forward. Whether Giovanni Moran is the next guy to come up and take over. But I think too, like I said, they're going to have, they were active in the secondary market even during the season with Nick Vincent and Kyle Bearclaw. They're gonna keep turning over couch cushions and rocks to see what they can find, and I still think you can build a good bullpen that way. We've seen the Rays do it. We saw the Padres before they started spending money do it. I believe that's the prototype for what they want their bullpen to be, and so I'm not predicting that they sign really anybody. Spend all your money on starting pitching, maybe an outfielder, maybe a shortstop, or make some trades and put a whole bunch of money in one really good starter, or if for some reason you could get Trevor Story, which you and I both know is not going to happen.
Unfortunately so. Yeah. Right. It's, and people weren't paying attention, but the bullpen filled with also Rans that you mentioned actually performed pretty well down the stretch last year.
Luke Farrell was good before the end of it, and Coulomb. I mean, their 5 most valuable relievers were probably I'm sure Duffy and Rogers were in there, but then it was guys that they just had picked up where you could ask the average fan off the street where the guy came from and they'd have no idea.
I mean, not maybe above the average fan even. So right. So I think that's how they'll build a bullpen. They'll use a bunch of interesting arms. To your point, I think Duran might see time in the bullpen. Guys like Cantorino who have trouble staying healthy but have electric stuff could Winder. See time in the bullpen. Winder. It'll be interesting to see, but they won't lack options, and they shouldn't have to spend to have a pretty decent bullpen.
Strowman or Rhodan for you? I know the answer, but the people don't.
I don't know if you do know the answer. I
thought you were going to say Strowman for sure.
I am going to say Strowman.
Okay.
Strowman is it's interesting because I'm letting my Twins fan bias kind of cloud it. Strowman is the better choice. He's the safer choice. He's the more consistent choice.
If he strikes anybody else out, he's an ace. Right now, he's a number 2, super athletic number 2 who came back from the ACL. He's defied expectations from everyone. And he's got that mentality where you're not going to beat me, which, when the Twins face the Yankees in the playoffs again someday, and hopefully
You need it.
he'd be on that team. That if your identity is shaped behind your ace and it's Marcus Strowman, you can do a lot worse than that.
So yes, Strowman is the better choice. He's the more consistent choice. He's the safe choice. Rhodan, I think, is the more realistic choice, which is why I erred on the side of maybe saying him. And he's the higher upside choice because stuff is electric. He throws the living heck out of the ball.
Yep.
But you just don't know what you're gonna get. You don't know if you're gonna end up with, if you pay him 3 years, $17 million a year, you don't know if you're gonna end up with a reliever in a year because he can't stay healthy. Maybe it's an awesome high leverage reliever and he's being paid like Liam Hendricks is for the White Sox. But he had the best year of his career last year. His stuff was amazing. He still only threw 159 innings.
Yeah, I mean, I think they backed off a little bit too, which the whole factor there too is the Tony La Russa factor. I thought for sure he was going to burn out that rotation because of the jump from 60 games to 162. And really, they didn't make any noise in the playoffs, but it wasn't because they burnt guys out. They just didn't have a good series. I don't know what it'd be like to get him away from TLR because we haven't seen him healthy and not with Tony La Russa, like with Ricky Renteria or Robin Ventura necessarily. There's a lot of like Rich Harden in his game in the sense that you're just like, oh man, if you could just stay healthy. And I think, to your point about 3-year deal, I wouldn't be surprised if it took $60 million to sign him.
I would do it.
I would too, but I think that's what it would take.
Yeah. I mean, I would comfortably do it, but I would also pay. I mean, it's not my money. I would pay Strowman the same deal that, Kevin Gausman just got 5 years, 110, 5 years, 115.
Do you think his nonsense with all the opening of his mouth lately has dinged his price at all? Because honestly, I mean, what we saw with Trevor Bauer didn't really matter, but Bauer was also a strange case in a lot of ways. If you could get Strowman for $4 and $80, you signed that deal yesterday. $5 and $100, I think you do too. And if you got to stretch it to what those guys got, there's a very compelling case that he's a much safer bet than Robbie Ray or Max Scherzer or who am I missing here?
Kevin
Gausman. Yeah. I mean, Gausman's a 2-pitch guy who is kind of like the next convert from the former Orioles, like Jake Arrieta and so on. But his split is so good. He can make it as a 2-pitch guy.
If you're talking floor and ceiling, I think Strowman has the highest floor, between that Rhodan, Gausman, Ray group. I think you could conceivably argue the highest ceiling out of that group is probably Rhodan. Just
it's 100. It's
phenomenal.
It's Rhodan, Ray, Gausman. Well, Rhodan and then Ray and Gausman you could argue about, and then Strowman's ceiling, because I think Strowman's ceiling is like a strikeout per inning with a 50-some% ground ball rate, which is like it's elite. You can build a rotation behind that, but it's not 12 strikeouts per 9. I mean, when I was trying to explain Rhodan to Twins fans, I'm just like, think about what Johan Santana did and then add 3 more strikeouts per game. It would be like nothing you've ever seen from the left side. 90, I mean, he's touching 97, 98 in the playoffs. And again, he's amped up and he couldn't sustain it for 4 or 5 innings. But they've never had a lefty who could throw 95 for more than an inning at a time.
I was thinking about this last night in preparation for this podcast. That's how my brain works. I was getting excited about the possibility of Rhodan. And I was thinking, have the Twins ever had a lefty that electric with that type of strikeout stuff? And what the closest I could come is
I know where you're going.
In 06.
06 Liriano. Yep, I knew you were going there.
For 2 months before he broke his elbow in my collective heart.
Could you imagine if that talent was in this environment, what the numbers would look like? Because back in those days, like striking out 9 point whatever, 10 point whatever per 9 was insane. I mean, I don't remember what Santana's best was. I think it was like 10-5, 10-6, something like that. In this day and age with a healthy baby Liriano, you might be striking out 13 or 14 per 9 as a starter. I think that's how nasty he was.
Yeah, absolutely. Just that I'm invoking, that memory and that name and thinking about Johan Santana. That tells you how good Carlos Rhodan can be from the left side if he's healthy. And therein lies the rub, right? Can be if he's healthy. And that's the only reason he's available to somebody like the Twins. So it's a risk worth taking.
Yeah, no qualifying offer tied to him. Do you care that he's left-handed versus right-handed?
Not necessarily.
Right.
The Twins don't have a lot of lefties, in their rotation or even in their system, do they?
Right.
I mean, not that they only have two to three players in their rotation in general right now, but
right.
They haven't had a lot on the left side, so that is intriguing just in that sense, but it doesn't really matter.
No, me neither. I mean, you could throw the ball up there granny style if it's going to get guys out. So
Right.
it doesn't make a difference to me. Let's do this. For the most part, I've covered all the ground I wanted to for episode 1. So let's do this. Let's close with, what does your ideal rest of the offseason look like? Let's go blow for blow. I think we could probably agree they need at least 2 more starters, maybe 3.
Yep.
At that point, you're going to need a shortstop. And then maybe like a wild card. Like, let's say you get to February 1, and there's a few interesting guys left. You got a few extra bucks in the budget, or you really want to pull a trade for a guy that you really like. How about we go down the list? Like for me, I'm going to go first because I'm the host and I can do whatever I want. Actually, we're both hosts, so whatever, but I'm the one hitting the record button. For me, I really want Rhodan, but I'd be okay with Strowman. And I can't help myself. I really want Yusei Kikuchi as the number 2 guy. A guy who throws 95 from the left side. He got hit hard. I get it. That's going to be reflected in his price. But this is a guy a couple years ago everyone was saying is the next big thing coming over from overseas. I just think you got a chance to make something out of him.
Yeah, I would probably be about the same. You think about, I love the idea of Rhodan and Kikuchi together, both fireballers from the left side.
And then
that are still available.
Mix them up with Ryan and then Ober after that, and then your number 5 spot is whoever your flavor of the week is, prospect wise, or Randy Dobnak. Maybe he gets back on the horse. I'm pretty out on Randy, but I also realized he was put in a tough spot last year as a multi-inning reliever when he's never really done that.
So, I mean, if we're talking ideal offseason, if you're asking me, right?
Sure.
It's gotta, I don't think the offseason can be ideal without one of Rhodan or Strowman.
Right.
Because they have to get one of those 2 unless they're making a big trade, which I don't think is ideal.
No, and you'd have to get Zach Gallen for me. Zach Gallen's my guy. I'm sure you have a guy, someone of that ilk, someone who, when you don't squint too hard, you can see a future high number 2, Luke Weaver. And again, a lot of this was more likely before they went and got Brent Strom to be their pitching coach. I have a friend who's friends with Weaver, and Weaver was just elated after talking on the phone with Strom. So it's going to be really hard to steal any of those guys. You might be enthused about Luis Castillo. Sonny Gray could be interesting. Frankie Montas. Non-tenders. Let's talk about those non-tenders quick. So this guy, because this is part of the deal, this guy thinks Sean Manaea could be non-tendered. I'd be all over that.
I would be all over it. I'd be shocked.
Yeah, Jesus Aguilar. Ryan Yarbrough from the Rays. Sure. Rockies, he's got Raimel Tapia, Daniel Bard, and Carlos Estevez. Daniel Bard signed a deal today. Gary Sanchez and Miguel Andujar, don't care. Renfroe. Sanchez is a DH maybe, but Renfroe, Benintendi would trip my trigger a little bit. Actually, one other guy that is kind of on the back burner for me is Jorge Solaire, and actually I have him on my franchise here. When you look at him, you're like, if you ever wanted to create a new Nelson Cruz, and again, that's not easy to do, but if you're going to replace his potential production with someone who's not named Miguel Sano for $3-4 million bucks, or 5, maybe 6, I don't know what it's going to take. You can do worse than Jorge Solaire.
It's not a bad idea. To the kind of wild card outfield types, I don't believe that it would ever happen. But Andrew McCutcheon can still mash lefties.
Mhm.
I like that as a wild card fit. I don't believe that would really happen, but I like that as a kind of a DH cornerback lefty mashing fit as
Well,
someone who doesn't necessarily believe in the Brent Roters of the world.
and the worst kept secret is that Trevor Larnach was a mess at the end of last season and then got hurt.
Mhm.
Alex Kirilloff was decent, but he also might play first base and Sano DH. So in that case, you do open up a corner for a Kutch or a Benintendi or a DH option like a Solaire. It's a lot of fluidity that makes for a fun bit of talking back and forth, and I'm curious to see how they fill it. So yeah, I made pretty clear what I want to do in terms of pitching at shortstop. Um, you could talk me into Freddie Galvis. You could talk me into Jose Iglesias. I'm not crazy about either of them. You could also talk me into Trevor Story and then trading some prospects for some first 3-year pitchers like Zach Gallen and or maybe Zach Gallen and Sonny Gray. You know, you could make that work. Trevor Story is that good, but it's not going to happen.
Mhm.
So for me, it comes down to what am I willing to do at shortstop? How motivated are the Cardinals to move DeYoung, who's had a couple down years? What's his salary situation? I think he signed one of those deals where it was like 4 years, 30-some million, but he's getting to the back end of it, like the Cardinals like to do with guys like Alan Craig and whoever else. Um,
Right.
so you could also maybe trade for Didi Gregorius. There's some options at short, but I do not think you can go into next season with Jorge Polanco as your starting shortstop because you've already burnt that bridge in the sense that we view you as a second baseman, and then putting him back there, I just don't see it.
Right. Paul DeYoung makes sense. Paul DeYoung, so 6 million this year, 9 million next year, 2 team options for 24 and 25 at 12.5 million and 15 million,
If
which
he
would likely
rebounds,
get declined.
yeah, they'd be declined. But if he rebounds, I mean, it's not impossible. And I really like that Edmundo Sosa kid behind him. But again, they always have guys like DeYoung just kind of come out of nowhere. What does it take to get him? That's a whole nother question. But I'd be on board with that. Pretty good
I don't
defender.
think much. Maybe I'm wrong here. I'll have to
No,
check with my Cardinals buddy, but I don't think much.
I would assume not. Again, guys under control are not getting paid as much as we might have previously expected. So maybe guys
I
who are
will
under control.
say, I will say the Joey Wendell return was a little bit more than I thought, just in terms of a prospect. It was
Yeah,
so it was
30-something overall pick a couple years ago.
yeah, it was a one of one deal. It's Cam Meisner, who
Yeah,
was a 35th overall pick a couple years ago, I think out of Missouri, I want to say.
the name
I
is
could be
familiar,
wrong
but I don't
about
know
that.
why. Cam with a K, I believe.
Yep, and a tooled up outfielder who has swung and missed a lot. But I would say similar, frankly, to like a Matt Wallner. Like if we're talking like a 1-for-1 deal, one for one comparison, it
That's
would
a
have been
lot.
like Joey Wendell for Matt Wallner, and I don't think I would have been down for that. So,
Well,
um,
the Twins Daily crew would have burnt the streets, burnt things in the streets. They love their prospects, and
right.
I'm not begrudging them of that. But
Well, he's one of us too. So
yeah, one of us. So back to wrapping it up with rest of the offseason plan. I have no interest in signing another reliever. I would bring back Alex Colomé on like a 1 year, $2 million deal, something super cheap where it's like, hey, if you find it, great. If you don't, you're going to be gone in June anyway.
yeah,
Would you have any interest in bringing back Andrelton Simmons on 1 year, $2 million? No.
I don't even want to say the words. No,
Yeah.
no.
I
Bye.
mean, I can't wait though for when he goes to the Yankees, puts up like a 720 OPS and a 5-win season, and everybody starts crying. But
If he's their answer at shortstop, I'll be elated.
right,
That would be because the fans will be livid.
right, and I love to see that. I love when the Bronx is burning. So we starters, yeah, shortstop, whatever, and then a few bats. There's nobody I feel strongly enough to pound the table for. What are you doing at first base and DH going into next season?
I think. Well, I like the idea of DH flexibility. I really
Okay.
do.
Okay.
So rotating guys in and out,
especially Garver. If you have
Yep.
Rhodan up and Jeffers can hit, that does give you some flexibility to cycle guys in and out. Rhodan kind of reminds me of like a jacked up Drew Butera.
Rotating guys in and out. So Garver getting Donaldson off his feet, having Sano take Sano's probably the main guy over there.
Miranda too, though. Miranda could play some third or some second or mix and match with a rise when Donaldson's off his feet. You do have a lot of options. I don't think Nelson Cruz is coming back. I just don't see it.
He's not. I think he's going to end up in a National League somewhere on a pretty
San
good
Diego,
chunk of
maybe.
Change. And and that would make a lot of sense. They were after him at the deadline.
Good
for him. But yeah, it's rotating Sano, getting Donaldson off his feet, getting a rise off his feet because he had knee troubles, and just kind of rotating guys in and out. I think the idea is every day your first baseman hopefully is Alex Kirilloff, unless you've got him bumping into the outfield.
Right.
And then you've got Snow working between first and DH, and you just mix and match it. And I think that works. That's where my hesitation on a guy like Jorge Solaire comes in, because I don't like the idea of locking someone into that specific position, and I don't really want him in the outfield. So I don't love the idea of locking someone into the DH. So at this point, I've moved on from Nelson Cruz emotionally. I don't think he makes a lot of sense for what this team needs to do at the DH position.
And I think the writing's on the wall that they're going to target a non-tendered outfielder, because as much as you and I can look at this and say, man, I love Trevor Larnach, I love Byron Buxton, I love Max Kepler, I love Miguel Sano, and I love Alex Kirilloff, as 5 guys for 5 spots, we get too tied up in the fact that 3 of those guys might get hurt. Especially Buxton. Kirilloff's already been hurt. Larnach did not adjust to off-speed pitches whatsoever this year. Miguel Sano is literally maybe on his last leg. He's got options after this. And so if he gets his option declined after next year, he's done. So they could easily DFA him this year if he's just absolutely awful. I think the writing's on the wall that they could add another guy. And that's where Chris Taylor to me would have come in, but I just don't see that happening. But another guy too I like is Jonathan VR, who could really play all over. So I don't know that we solved anything tonight, and I don't think that the plan was to, because we want to have more episodes. But man, it's good to be back. It's good to be back with you. And why don't we make this kind of a weekly thing and see if we can make some money and make some people happy?
Yeah, let's do it, man. I mean, we can't go too deep into it. And, in 36 hours, there's not going to be a lot to talk about for a while. So we'll have some topics to go over and retread here.
Well, and we'll have a non-tenders by then. And so try me. I can always come up with something. I kept things going during the pandemic. On Twitter, maybe not as much on a podcast or writing, but we'll find a way. Anyway, though, hey, man, thanks so much. Again, people should check out you on Twitter at 2__Canes with the Z, me at Brandon_Warne. Check out that 90s baseball pod, which just like this Midwest Swing is powered by Access Twins. And until next week, we'll see ya. Peace.